Every dead race left one warning. Earth only pretends to hide. Part 2. The Ardent Vigil landed at a military base in the Nevada desert at 2 in the morning. There were no lights on the runway, no ground crew waiting, just a single black transport vehicle sitting in the dark with its engine running. A woman stepped out. She wore a plain gray suit and had short brown hair that looked like it had not been brushed in days. Her name was Maggie Sloan, and she did not shake anyone's hand. "Follow me," she said. "The Admiral is waiting below." Below turned out to be very far down. The transport drove them to a concrete building that looked like a storage facility from the outside. Inside, there was an elevator. Maggie pressed her hand to a panel, and the elevator dropped for nearly 2 full minutes. When the doors opened, Danny Hale stepped out into a facility that should not have existed. The place was enormous. The ceiling was 50 feet high. The floors stretched out in every direction, filled with equipment, consoles, and structures that Danny did not recognize. Hundreds of people moved between stations, wearing uniforms he had never seen before. The air smelled like metal and electricity. "Welcome to the cradle," Maggie said. Lena Whitmore stopped walking. Her eyes were wide. She was staring at a device mounted on a platform near the center of the room. It was shaped like a sphere, with rings turning slowly around it, and it gave off a low hum that Danny could feel in his teeth. "That is Ilvari design," Lena whispered. "But it has been modified, heavily modified." Maggie glanced at her. "You are correct. That device was built using principles taken from Ilvari ruins 60 years ago. It has been improved since then." "60 years?" Nora said. "We only made contact with the Galactic Concord 40 years ago. You are telling me Earth had alien technology before that?" Maggie did not answer. She led them through the facility to a briefing room at the far end. Admiral Frank Dutton was sitting at a long table. He stood when they entered and gestured for them to sit. "What you are about to hear does not leave this room," Dutton said. His voice was calm, the same way it had been on the comlink. "Not because I am asking you to keep a secret, because if this information gets out, our species dies." He let that sit in the air for a moment. Then he began. 212 years ago, Earth picked up a signal. It was not a message from another civilization. It was a broadcast, old and automatic, repeating on a frequency that natural objects do not produce. A team of scientists decoded it. What they found matched exactly what you discovered on that Ilvari station. A warning, a pattern, a countdown. Dutton tapped the table, and a map of the galaxy appeared above it in blue light. Red dots marked the locations of 17 dead civilizations. Every species that rose to a certain level of power and made itself known was eventually destroyed, he said. The signal described the mechanism. Not a species, not an empire, a system, autonomous, ancient, older than most of the stars on this map. It watches, it waits, and when a civilization crosses the line, it moves. Danny leaned forward. The quiet tide. "That is what the Ilvari called it. We have other names for it, but yes, the same thing." Dutton looked at each of them. When Earth's leaders understood what the signal meant, they had a choice. Hide and hope the system never found us, or do something no other species ever did. "What did they do?" Clint asked. "They decided to cheat," Maggie Sloan said from the corner of the room. She had her arms crossed and was leaning against the wall. Every dead race either hid and failed, or expanded and got noticed. Earth did neither. Earth walked onto the galactic stage on purpose, shook hands with everyone, smiled, and presented itself as the most harmless, average, slightly dumb species in the sector. Nora blinked. "The whole thing is an act?" "The whole thing is an act," Dutton confirmed. "Our public fleet, the ships the Concord sees, they are 30 years behind what we can actually build. Our weapon systems, our shields, our engines, all downgraded for the show. every diplomatic meeting, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange. It is all managed to make humanity look like a minor species, still figuring out how to tie its shoes. Lena was staring at the map. And behind the mask? Dutton changed the display. New dots appeared. 12 star systems, none of them on any public chart. Each one contained installations, shipyards, weapons platforms, research stations, defensive networks. Behind the mask, Dutton said, we have been preparing for the day the quiet tide comes for us. We recovered technology from 9 dead civilizations. We studied it. We improved it. We built things that no species in this galaxy has ever built, because no species ever had access to the combined knowledge of that many others. He pointed to a shimmering field generator on the display. This is the Veil. It is based on Ilvari shielding, but we pushed it further. The Veil can make an entire star system appear empty. Not hidden, empty. No heat signatures, no gravity fluctuations, no electromagnetic output. As far as any scanner in the galaxy is concerned, those systems do not exist. Danny sat back in his chair. His mind was trying to hold all of this at once, and it was not easy. How many people know about this? On Earth, roughly 11,000, Maggie said. Across all installations, about 90,000. Every one of them has been vetted, trained, and committed to the mission. Some of them have lived their entire lives underground or off the grid. Clint Hargrove had been quiet since they sat down. Now he stood up. His face was tight. I served in the public fleet for 12 years, he said. I fought in 3 engagements. I watched people die. Good people. And you are telling me that we had better weapons, better ships, better everything, and you let them die to keep up a show? Dutton met his eyes. Yes. That is all you have to say? No, I have more. Dutton stood as well. Every death in the public fleet was weighed against the survival of 8 billion people on Earth, and another 6 billion across our colonies. If we had shown our real strength even once, the mask would have cracked. And if the mask cracks, the quiet tide sees us for what we really are. Not a harmless young species, a threat. And then it comes for us, the same way it came for the Ilvari, the same way it came for all of them. Clint did not sit down, but he did not say anything more. Nora spoke quietly. The line I found in the oldest archive, the one about a world that pretended to hide. That was about us. Dutton nodded. We believe so. We do not know who left that message or how they knew about Earth. But it means that someone, a very long time ago, saw what we were doing, and they understood. Lena raised her hand slightly. Admiral, I have been looking at the technology in this facility since we walked in. Some of it goes beyond anything I have seen in the dead civilization's records. You did not just copy them. You went further. We had to, Dutton said. Copying is not enough. The tide destroyed those species, even with their technology. We needed to be better, and we are. At least we believe we are. We have never had the chance to test it against the real thing. A soft alarm sounded in the room. Maggie checked her comm device, and her expression shifted just slightly. We have a problem, she said. The Galactic Concord is sending an observation envoy to Earth's sector. Routine visit, they say. But there is a name on the delegation list that concerns me. Kale Seren. The Vathari diplomat, Nora said. I have read his files. He is known for asking questions that other diplomats avoid. Exactly, Maggie said. He is smart, he is curious, and he has a particular interest in humanity. Dutton looked at all of them. His face was stone. Then we do what we have always done. We smile. We look harmless. We let him see exactly what we want him to see. The show goes on. Danny Hale looked around the room at the impossible things Earth had built in secret. At the weight on Clint's face, at the sharp edge in Maggie's eyes, and at the quiet fire in Lena's expression. He thought about the 17 red dots on the map. 17 dead races, 17 warnings, and one species that had listened. He wondered how long, the mass could hold. Every dead race left one warning. Earth only pretends to hide. Part 3. The Concorde envoy arrived on a Tuesday. 3 ships, polished and formal, dropping out of faster-than-light travel just beyond Earth's moon. They announced themselves on open channels, and Earth's public fleet scrambled a welcoming escort that looked just clumsy enough to be believable. Kale Soren stood at the observation window of the lead Concorde ship and watched the human escort approach. The ships were boxy and slow, painted in dull gray, with visible weld lines on their hulls. Soren tilted his long head slightly. The Vathari had thin faces and wide-set eyes that gave them an expression humans often mistook for kindness. In truth, Soren's expression meant he was thinking. "They always send their worst-looking ships to greet us," he said to his aide. Every time. Soren and the Concorde delegation were taken through Earth's public shipyard in orbit, a facility that built mid-range transport vessels and light patrol craft. Everything was clean, organized, and exactly average. The workers smiled. The engineers explained their systems with the careful pride of people who knew their work was decent, but not remarkable. Nora Beckett had been assigned to accompany Soren. She walked beside him through the corridors, answering his questions with practiced ease. She had spent 2 days memorizing the public version of every system on the station, and she delivered each answer with the right mix of openness and mild embarrassment, like a student showing a project they knew was not the best in the class. Soren listened politely. He asked about engine output. Nora gave him numbers that were accurate for the public fleet. He asked about weapons. She described a standard missile system that was 15 years old by real Earth standards, and 30 years old by the numbers she gave. He asked about shielding. She explained a basic energy barrier system that any Concorde species would consider average. Then he asked a question she did not expect. "Your technician on level 3, he said. When she was explaining your navigation array, she started to say a word and then stopped herself. She replaced it with a simpler term. I am curious what the original word was." Nora kept her face calm. "I did not notice that. She may have just been choosing a clearer term for the translator." Soren looked at her with those wide eyes. "Perhaps," he said. That evening, Nora reported the conversation to Maggie Sloan through a secure channel. Maggie was not surprised. "He is testing you," Maggie said. "He does this. He throws out a small observation and watches how you react. Do not overreact. Just be steady. He is sharper than anyone we have dealt with before," Nora said. "I know. That is why I am watching him from 3 different angles. Just keep him comfortable and keep him talking. People reveal more when they feel safe." The next day, the delegation visited Earth's surface. They toured a university, a city center, and a cultural museum. Soren seemed genuinely interested in human art and music. He spent 20 minutes looking at a painting of a sunset over the ocean, and said nothing. When Nora asked if he liked it, he said, "Your species has a strange relationship with beauty. You create it even when no one is watching." They ate dinner at a restaurant in Washington. Soren ordered food he could not eat, and watched the humans around him. Nora ordered for both of them from a menu designed for multi-species guests. During the meal, Soren leaned forward. "I want to tell you something, Nora. Not as a diplomat. As a person." She waited. "The Vathari have old stories," he said. "Very old. From before the Concorde existed. They speak of a time when the galaxy was full of voices. Hundreds of species, all talking, all building, all reaching out to one another. And then, one by one, the voices stopped. Our elders say that the silence came slowly at first, and then all at once." Nora felt a chill run through her. "What do your people believe happened?" Soren looked at his glass. "We do not investigate. That is the truth. We do not look into the old extinctions, because we are afraid that the act of looking might attract whatever caused them. It is not a policy. It is a fear so deep that it has become part of our culture." Nora wanted to say something. She wanted to tell him that Earth had already looked, had already found the answer, and was already preparing. But she said nothing. She smiled and changed the subject to music. That same night, 600 light-years away, Sergeant Clint Hargrove dropped out of faster-than-light travel, above a world that used to belong to the Dreth. The Dreth were a small species, quiet and peaceful, with 12 colony worlds and no military to speak of. 3 of those colonies had gone dark in the past 2 weeks. No distress calls, no debris, just silence. Hargrove led a team of 8 down to the surface in a stealth shuttle. They landed on the outskirts of what had been the colony's largest city. There was nothing there. Not ruins, not wreckage, nothing. The city was gone. The ground where it had stood was smooth, flat, and gray, like someone had taken an eraser to the world and rubbed everything away. The air was clean, the sky was clear, but there was not a single living thing anywhere. No plants, no insects, no bacteria in the soil. "Lena, are you seeing this?" Hargrove said through his helmet comm. Dr. Lena Whitmore was watching through the shuttle's remote link back on Earth. Her voice came through after a short delay. "I am seeing it. Run a molecular scan on the ground surface." Hargrove knelt and pressed his scanner to the gray surface. The readings came back, and Lena went quiet for a long time. "The surface is not natural," she said finally. "It is the remains of everything that was here. Buildings, roads, soil, organic matter, all of it has been broken down to its base molecules and compressed into a uniform layer. Whatever did this did not destroy the city. It took it apart, atom by atom." One of Hargrove's team members, a young soldier named Pete Grady, looked out across the flat gray plain that stretched to the horizon. "This was a city of 200,000 people," he said. "It was." Hargrove collected samples and ordered the team back to the shuttle. On the flight out, he reviewed the data. The pattern of destruction matched the descriptions in the Elvari archive exactly. The quiet tide was not a legend. It was not history. It was here. It was active. And it was working its way through the galaxy right now. He sent a coded report to Admiral Dutton. Back on Earth, Soren continued his tour. On the 3rd day, he slipped away from the group during a visit to a research facility. He found a restricted terminal in a side corridor, and used a Vathari decryption tool to access its contents. He was not looking for weapons or technology. He was looking for patterns, for anything that did not match the picture Earth was showing. He found a file name, just a name, nothing more, buried in a maintenance log that should have been scrubbed. The name was Protocol Daybreak. Before he could open it, the door behind him opened. Maggie Sloan stood in the doorway. She was alone. She did not look angry. She looked like someone who had been expecting this. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. Soren straightened. "I was curious." "I know." Maggie stepped inside and closed the door. "You have been curious since you arrived. You noticed the technician slip. You noticed the power readings under the mountain range west of here. And now you have found a file name you were not supposed to see." Soren watched her carefully. "Are you going to threaten me?" "No." Maggie sat on the edge of a desk. "I am going to ask you a question. If you discovered that a species was lying, not to hurt anyone, but to protect everyone, including your own people, would you expose them?" The room was quiet. Soren looked at her for a long time. He did not answer. Maggie nodded as if that was enough. "Your shuttle leaves tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your visit." Soren stood alone in the room and thought about the silence in the Vathari stories, about voices disappearing one by one. He thought about the smooth, confident way the humans performed their role, and he thought about the fact that Maggie Sloan had not denied anything. He returned to the delegation and said nothing to anyone. That evening, Admiral Dutton received 2 reports within an hour of each other. The first was from Hargrove, confirming that the quiet tide was real and active. The second was from Deep Space Monitoring. 3 more species on the outer rim had reported colonies going silent. The pattern was accelerating. Dutton sat in the cradle, surrounded by the machinery of 2 centuries of secret preparation, and stared at the star map. The red dots marking dead civilizations had always been historical. Now, new dots were appearing in real time. We are running out of time to pretend. Somewhere above him, on the surface of a planet that the galaxy thought was ordinary, Nora Beckett walked Kale Seren to his shuttle. He paused at the ramp and turned to her. "Your species is remarkable, Nora," he said, "in ways I suspect you are not allowed to tell me." Nora smiled the same smile she had been trained to smile. "We are just trying our best," she said. Seren looked at her for a moment, and then he walked up the ramp without another word. The shuttle lifted off into the night sky, and Nora watched it go. She dropped the smile the moment he was out of sight. Every dead race left one warning. Earth only pretends to hide. Part 4. Jules Kraft made his broadcast on an open channel so every species in the Concorde could hear it. His face filled the screen on every diplomatic station, every fleet command center, and every news feed across 40 star systems. He was tall and heavy-boned, with dark ridged skin and eyes that burned a dull orange. His voice was deep, and his words were deliberate. "The humans are lying," he said. "They possess technology taken from dead civilizations, technology that is forbidden under Concorde law. They have hidden it from all of us. I demand a full inspection of every human world, every station, and every ship. If they refuse, the Dominion of Ashes will act." The broadcast ended. The galaxy held its breath. In the cradle, Admiral Dutton stood at the central table with his arms crossed, and watched the replay 3 times. Around him, the senior staff was already arguing. "He does not have the votes to authorize a Concorde inspection," Maggie Sloan said. "Not yet. But he is building pressure. 4 species have already expressed support." "Can we ride it out?" Danny Hale asked. Maggie shook her head. "Not quietly. Kraft is smart enough to know he does not need the Concorde's permission. He just needs enough noise to give him cover when he moves on his own." Clint Hargrove was standing against the wall with his jaw tight. "So what do we do? Smile and wave while he brings a fleet to our door?" "That is exactly what we do," Dutton said. "For now." Lena Whitmore raised a hand. "Admiral, I want to point out that Kraft's timing is not a coincidence. The quiet tide is active. Species are disappearing. The Concorde is scared. Fear makes people look for someone to blame, and Kraft is giving them a target." She is right. Kraft does not actually care about Concorde law. He wants what we have. If he can force us to reveal our technology, he will try to take it. Dutton looked at the map. The new red dots had multiplied. 7 species had now reported losses. The quiet tide was moving inward, toward the galactic core, toward the dense cluster of systems where most of the Concorde's population lived. Toward Earth. "We fight on 2 fronts," Dutton said. "Maggie, you go to the Concorde, present the data from the Dreth colony, show them what the quiet tide is doing, make them understand that the real threat is not us. Pull their attention away from Kraft." Maggie nodded. "And if Kraft moves before I get there? Then Clint handles it." Hargrove looked up. Dutton met his eyes. "You will defend Haven's Rest if he strikes there. But you will do it with public-level equipment only. No cradle technology, no veil systems. Nothing that breaks the mask." Clint's face did not change, but his hands tightened at his sides. "Understood." Maggie left within the hour. She traveled to the Concorde's Central Assembly on a civilian transport, dressed like a minor trade official. When she arrived, she requested an emergency session and presented the data Hargrove had collected from the Dreth colony world. She showed them the scans of the flat gray surface where a city used to be. She showed them the molecular analysis. She showed them the pattern. "This is not a natural disaster," she told the assembled diplomats. "This is not a disease. Something is systematically dismantling inhabited worlds. It has happened before, it is happening now, and it is getting closer to all of us." The chamber was silent. Some delegates looked horrified. Others looked like they already knew, like they had spent their whole lives trying not to think about it. Kale Soren was in the chamber. He watched Maggie speak and said nothing. When the session ended, he pulled 3 delegations aside and spoke to them privately. Within a day, 2 of the 4 species supporting Krath withdrew their backing. But Krath did not care about votes. He cared about force. The Dominion fleet jumped into the Haven's rest system without warning. 14 warships, heavy and bristling with weapons, dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the colony. They opened a channel and gave the humans 1 hour to surrender the colony for inspection. Clint Hargrove was already there. He had arrived 2 days earlier with 3 patrol ships and a garrison of 200 soldiers. Public-level equipment. No shields beyond standard issue. No weapons beyond what any mid-tier Concord species would carry. He stood in the command center of the colony's small defense station and watched 14 red dots on his tactical display. His comm officer, a young woman named Katie Voss, looked at him with wide eyes. "Sergeant, they outnumber us badly." "I know. Our shields will not hold against a sustained attack." "I know that too." Clint opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. Jules Krath appeared on screen, his orange eyes steady. "Surrender the colony," Krath said. "This does not need to be violent." "You are in human space without authorization," Clint said. "Leave." Krath smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I was hoping you would resist. I want to see what you really have." The channel closed. 30 seconds later, the Dominion fleet opened fire. The battle was brutal. Clint had 3 ships against 14. His patrol craft were fast, but undergunned. He used the colony's orbital platforms for cover, and rotated his ships to spread the incoming fire. Katie Voss managed the shield rotations, squeezing every second of protection out of systems that were never designed for this kind of fight. Clint knew he could win this. He had studied the specs of cradle-level weapons. A single pulse from a Vale-class cannon would have cut through Krath's flagship like paper. He had the knowledge, he had the training, and Dutton had told him no. So he fought with what he was allowed to have. The first patrol ship, the Briar, took a direct hit to its engine block 12 minutes into the fight. It lost power and began to drift. Clint ordered the crew to evacuate to the colony surface. 19 of the 23 crew members made it out. 4 did not. The second ship, the Corbin, held the line for another 20 minutes before its shields failed completely. Its captain, a man named Sam Lowell, rammed the ship into a Dominion destroyer at full speed. The destroyer lost its forward section and pulled back from the fight. Lowell and his crew were gone. Clint felt every loss like a weight being dropped on his chest. He kept fighting. He used the colony's terrain to his advantage. Haven's Rest had a dense asteroid belt nearby, and Clint pulled his remaining ship into it, using the rocks as cover. The Dominion ships were bigger and slower. They could not follow easily. Clint picked them apart, 1 shot at a time, drawing them into the belt and hitting them where their armor was thin. It took 4 hours. By the end, 5 Dominion ships were disabled or destroyed. The rest pulled back. Krath's flagship was damaged but functional. He did not send another message. He simply left. Clint stood in the command center and looked at the damage reports. 41 dead. 2 ships destroyed. The colony itself had taken surface hits that killed 11 civilians. He sent a message to Dutton. It was short. Colony held. 41 dead. Next time, I fight with everything or I do not fight at all. Dutton did not respond. Back at the Concorde, Maggie Sloane used the attack on Haven's Rest to finish what she had started. She presented it as proof that the Dominion was a threat to galactic stability. The remaining support for Krath collapsed. He was condemned by a formal vote, though everyone knew the condemnation had no teeth. Krath would lick his wounds and come back. He always did. But something else happened that Maggie did not plan. Kale Soren requested a private channel to Earth. He reached Nora Beckett. I watched the battle footage from Haven's Rest, he said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Your people fought with inferior weapons against a superior force. They lost people, they lost ships, and they won. Nora said nothing. Your people held back, Soren said. It was not a question. Nora looked at the screen for a long moment. She thought about the mask. She thought about the 17 dead races and the promise she had made. And she thought about Clint Hargrove's face when he came back from the Dreth colony. She did not deny it. Soren nodded slowly. I will not tell anyone, he said, but I need you to know that I see it, and I think the time for your performance is running short. The channel closed. That night, deep beneath the Nevada desert, Lena Whitmore ran from her lab to Dutton's office. She was holding a data pad, and her hands were shaking. The deep space array picked up something, she said, a massive energy signature, moving through the void toward the galactic core. Dutton took the pad. Dominion? No. I ran it against every known species in the Concorde database. No match. She paused. Then I ran it against the dead race's archives. Dutton looked up. Exact match, Lena said. The quiet tide. It is coming this way. And based on its speed, it will reach the inner systems within 3 months. Dutton set the pad down on his desk. He sat in silence for a full minute. Then he stood up and pressed a button on his console. All station commanders, priority channel. Begin pre-activation sequence for Protocol Daybreak. This is not a drill. Somewhere above, on the surface, the world went on. People drove to work. Children went to school. The sun rose over a planet that the galaxy believed was ordinary. Below in the dark, the machines of war began to wake up. Every dead race left one warning. Earth only pretends to hide. Part 5. The quiet tide entered mapped space on a Friday morning, and within 6 hours, every species in the galaxy knew that the universe had changed. It did not look like a fleet. It did not look like anything alive. It was a wave of structures, billions of them, each one no bigger than a house, but connected to every other by threads of energy so old that they pulsed in rhythms that predated the birth of most stars. Together, they formed a wall that stretched across 3 light-years and moved with a slow, terrible patience. The first Concorde world in its path was a Vathari mining colony called Tesserath. The colony sent a distress call at dawn. By noon, the call had stopped. When scout ships arrived 2 hours later, the planet's surface was a smooth gray sheet. 2 million people gone. Every building, every tree, every drop of water, broken down to its base atoms and pressed flat. Panic tore through the Concorde. Species that had spent centuries avoiding conflict suddenly scrambled for weapons. Fleets that had never fired a shot in anger launched toward the tide with everything they had. They lasted minutes. The tide's structures absorbed energy weapons, adapted to kinetic impacts, and dismantled every ship that came close. It did not fight. It processed. It erased. In the cradle, Admiral Frank Dutton stood before a room full of people who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Some of them had been born in these underground facilities. Some had never seen the sun. They had trained, built, planned, and waited. Now the wait was over. Activate Protocol Daybreak, Dutton said. Across 12 hidden star systems, the veil dropped. Where there had been empty space, there were now shipyards the size of moons. weapons platforms orbiting artificial suns, research stations buried inside hollowed-out asteroids, and a fleet, 300 warships, each one built from a fusion of human engineering and technology recovered from 9 dead civilizations. Their hulls were layered with Ilvari alloys. Their engines burned fuel refined using methods from a species that had no name. Their weapon systems cycled through 6 different technological bases, any one of which could match the best the Concorde had ever produced. The Galactic Concorde received the data within minutes. For a long time, no one said anything on any channel. Then Kale Soren broadcast from the Vathari flagship. His voice was steady, but there was something raw underneath it. "They lied to us," he said. "For over 200 years, the humans pretended to be less than they are. They watched us, traded with us, and smiled at us, while hiding the most powerful military force this galaxy has ever seen." He paused. "And that lie may be the only reason any of us survive what is coming." Commander Danny Hale took command of the lead battle group from the bridge of the Ardent Vigil. The ship had been refitted in 48 hours with cradle-level systems. It was barely the same vessel. The engines hummed with a deeper note. The weapons console displayed options that had not existed a week ago. The shields wrapped around the hull like a second skin. Nora Beckett sat at the communications station. Her job was the hardest one in the fleet. She had to hold together an alliance that had been built on a lie, in real time, while the galaxy burned. She opened channels to every Concorde species that was still capable of fighting, and began translating not just words, but fear, anger, and desperate hope into something that could function as unity. Clint Hargrove stood in the drop bay with 300 soldiers. For the first time in his career, he was carrying weapons that matched what he knew. The weight of them felt right. The shame of Haven's Rest was still in his chest, but now it burned in a different direction. Lena Whitmore was in the tactical center, surrounded by screens showing data from every dead civilization Earth had ever studied. She was the one who would find the way to win, if a way existed. The combined fleet met the quiet tide in the space between 2 dead stars. The Concorde ships formed the outer ring. Earth's fleet held the center. No one had agreed to this formation. It had simply happened. The Concorde ships moved to the outside because in the deepest part of their collective instinct, every species present understood that the humans were the ones who had been built for this. The first engagement was a disaster. The tide adapted. Earth's opening barrage used Ilvari energy weapons, and for the first 90 seconds, the tide's structures shattered and burned. Then they learned. Within 3 minutes, the same weapons had no effect. The tide structures rebuilt themselves with surfaces that reflected the energy back. 14 Concorde ships were destroyed by their own redirected fire. Danny pulled the fleet back. "Lena, talk to me." Lena was running calculations as fast as her systems allowed. Every dead race fought the tide with their best single technology. The tide evolved past each one. That is why they all lost. They only had one approach. We have more than one. The tide's adaptive system is based on pattern recognition. It learns to counter one type of attack, but its learning is sequential. It cannot adapt to multiple unrelated technologies at the same time, because it has never encountered them together. No species before us ever combined the technology of other civilizations. We are the first. Danny understood. Rotating weapons protocol. Every wave uses a different base technology, never the same one twice in a row. Yes, cycle through all 6. By the time the tide adapts to one, we hit it with the next. It will keep trying to catch up and never get there. Danny broadcast the order to the fleet. The second engagement began. The human ships hit the tide with kinetic rounds forged from materials no living species had used in 8,000 years. The tide's structures cracked and broke. When they started to adapt, Danny switched to energy beams based on a method that came from a species so old that even the Ilvari had considered them ancient. The tide's adaptive layer tried to shift and failed. Before it could catch up, the fleet switched again, this time to a pulse weapon that disrupted molecular bonds, using principles that Lena had found in the archives of a race that had died before Earth's sun was born. The tide began to fracture. Concord ships joined the attack where they could. Their weapons were less advanced, but they added chaos to the mix, another variable the tide could not predict. Zul Krath arrived with what was left of his Dominion fleet. He said nothing on any channel. He simply flew into the fight and started shooting. Clint Hargrove watched Krath's ships on his display and allowed himself one grim nod. The battle lasted 9 hours. Ships were lost on every side. The tide was vast and old, and even confused, it was deadly. Entire sections of the combined fleet were swallowed. Danny lost count of the distress calls. Nora kept the channels open, kept the translations flowing, kept the alliance from splintering as fear and exhaustion took hold. In the 8th hour, Lena identified the tide's central coordination node. It was a single massive structure at the heart of the wave, older than anything else in the field. Every other structure in the tide received its instructions from this node. If it fell, the network would lose its ability to coordinate. Danny turned the ardent vigil toward it. The node was surrounded by a dense cloud of smaller structures that moved to protect it. The ship took hit after hit. Shields failed on the port side. 3 decks lost atmosphere. Clint led a team to seal the breaches while the ship kept pushing forward. They reached the node. It was enormous, a dark shape covered in patterns that pulsed with a cold blue light. It looked old enough to have been built when the galaxy was young. Danny gave the order. A Veil-class warhead, the most powerful weapon Earth had ever built, launched from the forward bay. It did not explode. It did something worse. It created a fold in space, a pocket where nothing could be detected. Nothing could exist on any known spectrum. The node was swallowed into it and collapsed. The effect rippled outward at the speed of light. Across the battlefield, the tide structures stopped moving. Some went dark. Others drifted, aimless, their coordination gone. The wave that had destroyed civilizations for billions of years stuttered and fell silent. The shooting stopped. For a long time, no one spoke on any channel. Then, one by one, ships began to signal. Concord vessels, human vessels, even Dominion ships. Alive, damaged, but alive. The aftermath was quiet and heavy. Millions were dead across dozens of worlds. Entire species had been reduced to remnants. The Concord as a political body was gone, its structure too broken to rebuild in the old form. Something new would have to take its place. Kale Soren led the negotiations. He was patient and honest, and he did not pretend that trust would come easily. The new framework he helped build was simpler than the old one. It had fewer rules and more transparency. Earth's deception was acknowledged openly. Some species were angry. Some were grateful. Most were both. Admiral Dutton addressed the surviving species in a broadcast that reached every inhabited system. He stood in the cradle, surrounded by the machines that had kept humanity's secret for 200 years, and he spoke plainly. Every dead race left a warning, he said. We listened, we prepared, and when the time came, we stood up. I will not apologize for the lie. The lie kept us alive long enough to keep all of you alive. What we do next, we do together. And we do it in the open. The broadcast ended. 3 weeks later, Nora Beckett stood at the memorial on Haven's Rest. The names of the 41 who had died defending the colony were carved into a stone wall. She read each one. She had not known most of them. That made it worse somehow. Kale Soren found her there. He stood beside her in silence for a while. "Will Earth hide again?" he asked. Nora looked at the sky. The stars were clear and bright, and somewhere out there, the wreckage of the quiet tide was still drifting. "We never hid," she said. "We just waited until you were ready to see us." Soren considered this. Then he said, "And what if something else comes?" Nora did not answer right away. She thought about the archives. She thought about the billions of years of silence. She thought about the 17 dead races and the one message that had spoken of Earth. "And this time, we will not be alone." Far away, at the edge of mapped space, a deep space sensor picked up a faint signal. It was old, automatic, repeating. It was not the quiet tide. It was something else, something that had been waiting even longer. The sensor flagged it and sent the data home. On Earth, in the cradle, a screen lit up. A technician looked at the reading and called for Lena Whitmore. Lena looked at it, and her face went pale. She picked up the comm and called Danny Hale. "The tide was the first wave," she said. "There is something else out there, and it just woke up." Danny sat in the silence of his quarters and stared at the wall. Then he stood up, put on his uniform, and walked to the bridge. The galaxy was watching now, all of it, together, and Earth had no intention of pretending anymore. Every dead race left one warning. Earth only pretends to hide. Part 1. The station was old, not old like a building or a ship that had been forgotten for 100 years. It was old in the way that made the mind feel small. 9,000 years it had been floating in the dark, circling a dead star that gave off no light and no heat. And somehow, it was still in one piece. Commander Danny Hale stood at the bridge window of the Ardent Vigil and looked at it. The station was shaped like a ring with 6 long arms reaching out from the center. There were no lights on it, no signals coming from it, just metal and silence. "That thing should not still exist," said Dr. Lena Whitmore from behind him. She was the ship's chief science officer, and she had spent most of her career studying dead civilizations. She had seen the ruins of 4 extinct species across the galaxy. None of them had left behind anything this well preserved. "The Ilvari built it," she continued. "They went extinct roughly 9,000 years ago. Everything else they left behind has been dust for centuries. But this station is made of something I have never seen before. The alloys are layered in a way that resists time itself." Danny turned to her. "Can we dock with it?" "Already checked," said Sergeant Clint Hargrove, standing near the tactical console. He was a broad man with short hair and hands that always seemed ready to reach for a weapon. "There is a docking port on the lower ring. It still has a seal. Atmosphere inside reads breathable, but I would not trust it until we send a team in first." Danny nodded. "Nora, you are with me and Lena. Clint, you bring 2 of your people, full gear." Lieutenant Nora Beckett looked up from her console and gave a small nod. She was the ship's xenolinguist, trained to decode alien language and handle first contact situations. There would be no first contact here. The Ilvari were long dead. But whatever they had left behind still needed someone who could read it. The team suited up and crossed the docking bridge into the station. The air inside was cold and thin but clean. The walls were smooth and pale, carved with lines that might have been writing or decoration or something in between. Their boots echoed as they walked through the curved hallways. Lena ran her scanner over the walls. "These markings are not decorative," she said. "They are data. The Ilvari stored information in the structure of their buildings. This entire station might be one giant archive." They reached the central chamber. It was a wide, round room with a column in the middle that stretched from floor to ceiling. The column glowed faintly when they entered, as if it had been waiting. Nora stepped forward and placed her hand on the column. Her translation rig lit up immediately. Data began streaming across her visor, faster than she could read. "This is a message," she said. No, not one message, many messages, from many species. She paused. Her face changed. Danny, the Ilvari collected the last words of other dead civilizations. There are 6 of them stored here. 6 species that went extinct before the Ilvari did. The room was quiet. Clint shifted his weight and kept his hand near his sidearm, out of habit. Nora kept reading. Her voice became slower as she went on. Every one of these species says the same thing. Not the same words, but the same warning. They all talk about something that found them, something that came after they reached a certain level of development. Once they became visible on a galactic scale, once they started spreading and building and broadcasting, something noticed them. What kind of something? Danny asked. The Ilvari called it the quiet tide. One of the other species called it the silence. Another called it the unmaking. A third one just called it the final census. Nora swallowed. They all describe the same thing. A force that erases civilizations. Not a war, not a plague. Something deliberate. Something that comes, takes everything apart, and moves on. Lena was scanning the column now. The data confirms it. Each species left behind a record of how it ended. Colony worlds going dark. Communications dropping off one system at a time. And then nothing. Total silence. Danny looked at the glowing column. Is there anything about what this force actually is? A species? A machine? Nora shook her head. None of them lived long enough to find out. The only thing they all agree on is the trigger. There is a line that appears in every archive, in every language, from every dead race. It translates roughly as, do not announce yourself, do not expand beyond your cradle. The moment they see you, it begins. Clid spoke for the first time since they had entered the chamber. So every species that got big enough to be noticed got wiped out, and the ones that stayed quiet survived. If any stayed quiet, Lena said, we do not know that anyone survived. Danny stood still for a long moment. Then he activated his comlink back to the Ardent Vigil. Secure all data from this station. Encrypt it at the highest level. No one outside this crew sees any of it until I say so. He then opened a quantum encrypted channel to Earth. It took 4 minutes for the signal to connect. When it did, the face of Admiral Frank Dutton appeared on his visor. Dutton was an older man with gray hair and steady eyes that never seemed to blink at the wrong time. Danny explained what they had found. He kept his voice even, but the weight of the information was hard to hide. When he finished, he expected shock. He expected Dutton to ask him to repeat the part about 17 dead civilizations. Dutton did none of those things. He listened, he nodded once, and then he said, "Bring the data home, Commander. All of it." Danny frowned. "Admiral, did you hear what I said? There is something out there that has been killing entire species for thousands of years." Dutton's expression did not change. "I heard you. Bring it home. We already know." The channel closed. Danny stood in the ancient chamber of a dead race and felt something cold settle in his chest. He turned to Nora. "Keep translating. I want everything this station has." Nora worked for another 2 hours. The team stood guard in the cold, empty room while she pulled data from the column. Most of it matched what she had already described. Warning after warning. Death after death. A pattern stretching back billions of years. Then she found something buried deeper than the rest. It was not from the Ilvari. It was not from any of the 6 species they had collected. It was older. Much older. It came from a civilization that had no name in any known record. A species so ancient that even the Ilvari had treated their words like something sacred. Nora read it out loud. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "There is one world that heard us. They did not hide, they pretended to. Nobody spoke. The station hummed faintly around them, keeping its long and patient watch over the dead." Danny Hale looked at his crew. He did not know what the words meant, Not yet. But the cold feeling in his chest told him that when he got home, he was going to find out. And he was not sure he wanted to.